And from there, we can now get into the playoff matchups that we know about. Let's start out east. We got Boston, we got Brooklyn. Since Brooklyn won the 7-8 game, I am excited for this one. I also have a couple of questions for you. My first question, nerdy as it is, what coverage do we see from Al Horford in this one?
Switch.
You think it is a switch for him?
Yeah.
Okay. Because they have dropped him as the season's gone on. So I was curious to see like where that goes because I think that is where the Bruce Brown matchup is gonna go. I think either Horford or Tice will be stashed on Bruce Brown, and I think that gives Brooklyn a pocket to attack if they're in drop, especially if you have Kyrie leading the dance or KD leading the dance. If that's not a switch that unlocks Bruce Brown with some of the floaters, some of the short role playmaking that he's been able to provide, that gives them a reasonable third aside from KD and Kyrie just doing stuff offensively.
Your point is valid. I just think it's going to come from Daniel Tice being on Brown.
Okay.
I think Horford is going to be on Drummond and switch the actions just to keep him from being a hub. And you can always scram switch off of Bruce Brown
Okay.
with Daniel
I see what you're saying.
and
Okay.
get to Drummond. And that way you can keep everything in front.
Hmm.
The question I had is if they do put Tice on him to start, does that open up what you're talking about and now allow Bruce Brown to become a roller? Because I don't know how comfortable they feel switching him in those same scenarios.
Okay.
Not that I don't think they wouldn't, but that would present the problem. I think Horford's going to be a switch for sure.
Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. And from there, how from Brooklyn side, how do you dole out the defensive matchups? Like who gets Tatum for you? Is that Bruce Brown?
How do you dole out the defensive matchups?
Brother, I have no idea. No, I'm just kidding. But like I would
No. I'll answer your question since you asked it so eloquently. Since this is the new vibe of the pod, defensive matchup central, I guess is what we're doing now.
it's got to start somewhere. It's a nice foundation that we build out from there.
I think Bruce Brown on Tatum has to be the move. Now, who you put KD on is going to be the interesting part. But I think KD starts on Horford. Just based on what they've done before. I think you put Drummond on Tice, you put Kyrie on Smart, you put Seth Curry on Jaylen Brown. If you start that way.
Ooh, boy.
What if they got to guard somebody?
Yeah, that's true. I'm just like, man, because Jaylen is a very good post player for a wing. And again, I just worry about like Seth is just the guy in the lineup. I feel like the teams are like, okay, we got to find this guy. Let's get him in action. Let's put him on the block. Let's see if we can get a team to force help from there. And that's what kind of scares me there because, like, in the again in the Brooklyn game, I mean, the Cavs game, hey Seth, just defend Isaac Okoro. And now, like, there's no real hiding place for Seth. You put him on Marcus Smart. Like, Marcus Smart has been running a bunch of pick and rolls since the turn of the counter. That would put Seth in the action. You don't want to put him on Jason Tatum, obviously.
You can't hide these guys in this series. And so you would hope for Kyrie's defense to, again, be where it needs to be for y'all to just be okay. And then hopefully you can just put Kyrie on Jaylen Brown. But you're not going to be able to hide Seth, Patty Mills, Goran, any of them. They're all going to get a turn. And last time they played, they actually switched Dragic onto Tatum on purpose a couple times. So it's like, all right, I think they understand that's something they have to deal with. Now, the key is going to be who KD guards and how much can he help and roam on the weak side. And that was one of my questions. Because, actually, it was one of my questions to you. I'll just go ahead and ask it. What do you have more confidence in? Brooklyn's ability to handle Boston's size or Brooklyn's ability to rotate?
I think it's their ability to rotate by default. Because, like, the size thing, I don't think that can really be solved without. I guess you can't say crater the offense because at the end of the day, if you have Kyrie and KD on the court, it almost doesn't matter because they can just knock down tough shots, period. But like if they were to really solve the size issue per se, like I think that would mean a lot of Kessler Edwards on the court for them. That would mean a lot more Nick Claxton. Not that you can play him and Andre Drummond together, but in general, like he would get more minutes in the rotation. You get more from Kessler Edwards, and that hurts the spacing. I feel like I think if you do have Claxton in instead of Andre Drummond in some of these lineups, Boston's going to be a little bit more comfortable switching stuff because they're not worried about Nick Claxton thrashing them on the offensive glass or mashing a small guy to the degree that Andre Drummond can. And so, to Brooklyn's credit, to the other part of the equation, like they have been pretty darn good at navigating switches and scramming guys out. Like the communication has improved leaps and bounds over since the season has gone on. So I think they have displayed enough to where they can make those rotations, or at the very least, I trust those more than I do them to kind of navigate the size mismatches.
Well, they're going to have to navigate the size to have a chance to win. It was a trick question.
Well, yes.
Drummond's going to be in a drop. KD's your best roamer.
Mm-hmm.
The scram switches are not going to be as easy as they were against Cleveland. Al Horford is a guy who can make you pay, and he can move in different directions, be in different spots on the court. They can go to empty corner stuff. They can make it easier or tougher for you to kind of scheme some things out. Boston has a much improved flow offensively. And you got to remember, if Marcus Smart is initiating these actions, those kickouts are to Brown and Tatum.
Yep.
So now they're holding your defense more, or they're driving those closeouts. You got to tie it in together because the size mismatches, they're going to do one of two things. They're going to force help or they're going to force a double team. Mm-hmm. And that's going to allow a kick. And now Brooklyn's scrambling. And if they're constantly in rotation, a lot of things open up for Boston. Mm-hmm. And the sneaky thing is the size allows Boston to use Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum together in the fourth quarter, which has been a question mark. So for me, that's my issue with Brooklyn in this series. Can they successfully make KD a roamer? And can they handle those moments of having to show help, having to show doubles? There's no way they're not going to. You're just going to have to. You're going to have your size where it is. But you've got to be able to handle it and rotate it and be together on a string and sustain that over the course of the game, of course, of the series. And they did that against Cleveland. They've shown great strides. But this Boston team has played differently. So it's going to be interesting.
I am worried about that aspect for Brooklyn. Because, again, the defense has improved. It was good to start the season because they kind of had to sustain that way while they were missing a bunch of guys. And then the defense fell off a cliff. And I feel like it's now climbing on the way up as they closed out the season. And now they get this Boston buzzsaw. And they've been humming. Like they found their rhythm with Marcus Smart as your lead guard. Jason Tatum has been incredible. Jaylen Brown has been very good. Actually, a quick lineup question for you from Boston's side. Who's going to be their fifth when they're closing out games? I think Horford's going to be out there, obviously. Tatum and Brown are going to be out there. Marcus Smart's going to be out there. Where do you go? Do you trust Tice? Do you go with Grant Williams? Do you go with Derek White?
My first guess would be Derek White, but go ahead.
Okay. I was about to say, like, this feels like the White series just because this feels like the Derek White series.
What?
This feels like the Derek White series.
Brother, we already talked about the Jazz.
You know what? This feels like the Derek White series because of the size issues that Brooklyn has. Like, I think Boston has the ability to play White more comfortably. Not that it would be an issue for him, but like the matchup feels more natural for him because of the size stuff. But I also go the other way where it's like, well, hey, do we want to capitalize on the fact that Brooklyn is going to be playing a lot of 3-guard lineups? Do we go Grant Williams, who has shot well this year? who is also very good defensively, but like has shown enough with the ball in his hands where it's like you don't really want to stash a small guy. You don't want to stash a Seth on him either if you're Brooklyn.
I worry about Grant Williams in this series because I think Kevin Durant would welcome any opportunity for Grant Williams to guard him.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to play into their hands that way. Okay. And that's no disrespect to Grant Williams, but if I'm Brooklyn, and based on what y'all do defensively, you come here. You deal with this guy, you deal with that guy, you do it over and over again. I'm fascinated to see which way they go. Like it might, I don't know if it's Peyton Pritchard series, but he's gotten some early fourth quarter looks. But my gut says White. Just keep things switchable. I have another question for you, though.
Okay.
What is your confidence level in the Celtics switching in this series?
Like it's still pretty high. Like I think naturally I would feel a little bit better about their defense if they had Robert Williams versus Daniel Tice. But like even with that, they have Smart, they have Tatum, they have Brown, they have Horford. Like the defensive infrastructure is strong enough. The communication is going to be strong enough, and they are one of, if not the best team at scramming guys out of stuff to begin with. So I don't worry about it too much. I think from there, it's just going to be like, okay, what exactly is Brooklyn running offensively? Like how complex they want to get, because they ran some good stuff against Cleveland. Cleveland wasn't really switching like that. So I wonder from Steve Nash's perspective, like how is he going to test Boston switches? Like how is he going to manipulate the floor to make the switches difficult to where you can maybe manufacture a matchup you want, and because of where the other guys are positioned on the floor, like you can't scram or you can't help comfortably.
The second part of what you said is what makes this series very interesting with Boston. One, there's not a ton of matchups they don't feel comfortable with. That's been the toughest part about this team because they have the size, the length, the versatility. They can even tilt matchups to get to matchups they think you want to get to and turn that into a switch. Mm-hmm. But when you say help comfortably, that's going to be the key. The Celtics, in the last time they played Brooklyn, did not show any fear of showing help. They weren't afraid to have Horford switch on Kyrie, Peyton Pritchard switch on KD, post up, will still show help. And that part is what makes it tough, because when you can switch and show help and recover, you're covering a whole lot of bases at once. And you can play out of that, take away the off-ball actions, showing double teams even if you're not doubling. Marcus Smart roaming around is tough to deal with. So how Boston manages that is going to dictate a lot of what Brooklyn can run in their playbook. And we know, as good as Brooklyn is offensively and as talented as those two are, when things bog down, I like to say they get #bored. Mm-hmm. And then you're watching, and in the bottom right corner of the screen, it says 0 points in 3 minutes and 13 seconds. And they score 12 in like a minute, but it's a stretch that always happens. But I mean, it's one of those things where I don't think Boston is afraid to leave their shell. I don't think they're afraid of their ability to recover on shooters. And that's where Brooklyn's going to have the mindset to be able to grind and know this may be a switch, but there's still their base behind it.
So who do you have in this series?
I wasn't even done my list.
Oh, go down the list then.
Jeez Louise.
You muted the mic. I thought you were done.
I was trying to breathe.
Oh, okay. All right.
Is Al Horford the X factor?
I feel like Tice is more of the X factor than Horford. Horford's probably second on my list. But I do think, again, because I came into this like, hey, is Horford in a drop or is he switching in this series? And you flip that on its head with the Tice point. It's like, you know what? Actually, you're right. So now I'm flipping those two in my order. It's still going to be important that Horford knocks down shots, and regardless of what he does, whether he drops or switches, he's going to have to hold up because he's had He's had a pretty heavy workload defensively this year.
Al, I he has to make shots in this series. He can't get to a point where he's not hitting shots and Brooklyn knows it, or he stops taking shots and Brooklyn knows it.
Mm-hmm.
That happens, things change. Bookmark that. Not that I think it will, but bookmark it. Do you have any concern about Boston's ball movement in this series?
Uh, a, l- a little bit. Like I think they've been passing so well in 2022. Like those concerns have alleviated for me. Again, to Brooklyn's credit, they have been much tighter with their switches and communicating those switches. And so if they are super dialed in, like I can see them honing in on some of the pet sets that Boston runs and kind of flatten them out. And maybe you get the Jays back into some of their I guess their 2021 tendencies. So where it's like, okay, first thing didn't work. Let me get to work. I can beat this dude in front of me. Which they may be able to because whatever the matchups are, but you don't want the offense to bog down. Because if it's bogging down with them, and now their kick out options are Marcus Smart, Daniel Tyson, Al Horford, I think Brooklyn's going to feel pretty comfortable with that.
It's all about the type of shots Boston creates and how they execute. I think they have to stay consistent on that end. The Nets don't have any issue playing that type of game with anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So while Boston has improved, they can't just lean on that. Do the Nets have any sort of answer for Jason Tatum?
Uh, not a good. Like their best bet might be Kevin Durant, just because of the length. But I think if you're Brooklyn, you want KD helping to clean up some messes versus him just taking the Tatum matchup outright. And even then, like I think you can test KD with some of the screen navigation, and that either forces a switch or you're able to create an advantage, and then you can try to get Brooklyn scrambling from there. And if you have again their best help defender now trailing Jason Tatum across the screen, that's Tatum's able to lead the dance from there. Like he's improved enough as a finisher and as a passer to make them pay in that regard.
His quick decision making has been great. This is going to be where we see the growth because if he gets going and Brooklyn really has to make decisions and send help, and now Boston can make them pay off his scoring ability. But Boston's been waiting for this entire time, so I'm interested to see how he handles this moment. Is this a Nick Claxton series?
Mm, I would like for it to be. I would like for it to be. I think he's definitely going to play. I just don't know. I don't know if I'm closing with Claxton in this series.
Who are you closing with then?
Like I feel like Andre Drummond has a better chance at forcing some sort of not panic, but they forcing something from Boston just because of the pure size and strength and what he does on the glass versus Claxton.
I think you need Claxton to show up in a big way. One, just for pure lineup versatility. Two, to give you another switch option. And three, who else are you going to go with? It's Drummond, it's him, and then it's KD at the five.
Yep.
And as fun as KD at the five is, this isn't necessarily the series for it just because of the two top players for Boston. And it's not like Marcus Smart won't post up either. So Claxton has to be locked in and have an impact. And when he gets his chances to roll, he's going to have to finish or kick it out.
Mm. How have you felt about the passing from him after rolls?
Still developing, work in progress. He's not afraid to do it. Just the processing speed sometimes. Sometimes he puts his head down, tries to gather and dribble. It's like, it's right there. Just look, fire it away.
I got you. Okay, was that your list? I want to make sure.
Yes, it's final, man. It's done. Jeez Louise.
Don't do me like this. I try. Here I am trying to read where you're at, and now I'm getting yelled at. This is tough. Who do you have in the series, good sir?
Nets in 6.
Ooh, Nets in 6. I have Boston in 6. So you don't think
You got a lot of teams going home on their home floor.
I, hey man, it'd be like that sometimes. Yeah, it's, Brooklyn has been a really good road team this year, but I don't know. Like I think well, one, I just think Boston is a better team, and I just think they will have more matchups to pick at than Brooklyn will. While also acknowledging again, KD can just go Nova, Kyrie can just go Supernova, but the Jays can as well. And again, it's just going to be a little bit easier because of the size issues that Brooklyn has for Boston to be able to generate some good stuff.
There's very little margin for error for Brooklyn in this series. I will say that much. So if Boston takes care of business and does what they're supposed to do, it's going to be a lengthy competitive series. But I would not be surprised at all if Boston wins. I just think Brooklyn has the shot makers to make this a different type of series, and the kind where you execute what you want to do and it doesn't matter. And now you look up and you're in a scenario where we have to win, like one of those type series.
I got you. To that
And
point, if I could flip
now
it.
you're
Oh, go ahead.
now you're on the road trying to figure out how to handle those two. It's very difficult to face Kevin Durant in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
You need him to play poorly 4 times within a certain time frame. And also Kyrie Irving's there. So Boston should take care of business. I'm going to go with Nets in 6.
Okay. To that point about just the ridiculous shot making that Brooklyn could do. Like, how often do you think we see the 4 guards plus KD? Because you say you don't think it's the series for him to go to 5. Do you think we just don't see that period?
I would roll to it, start a second, start a fourth, maybe.
Okay.
Anytime you can sneak it in there when there's not both Jays on there, why not?
All right.
Are we doing the all bench lineup talk tonight? Are we on that tonight? Are we doing that?
Well, no, KD will be on the floor, so you know that's not.
No, I'm just saying in general. I can't wait. I'm geared up. Wait for one all bench lineup to pop in this postseason.
Do you have commentary on all bench lineups, good sir?
Yes, I do. They're not the worst thing in the world. The Spurs made a living on it. This man said, I want to ask Pop about the all bench lineups. Do you know what those all bench lineups did in San Antonio? Brother, I got a whole Western Conference Finals film of an all bench lineup turning games around 4 consecutive times. You want to talk about all bench lineups? You know what?